I always inspectionally read before reading a nonfiction book. Inspectional reading is a type of reading shared by Mortimer J. Adler in his aptly named book, How to Read a Book. It's reading to quickly scope out a text to prime you for deeper reading and inform if deeper reading is necessary. That's why it's so awesome, because it helps you answer the question, what's the book about as a whole? And not waste your time reading books that you don't want to read in the first place. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to inspectionally read a book. This is the second part of my 4-part series, How to Get the Most Out of a Book Masterclass. If you haven't seen the first part, you can watch it up above, but you can also stay here with me right now too, if you want to. Let's learn how to inspectionally read. There are 2 types of inspectional reading. The first is pre-reading, and the second is superficial reading. Pre-reading is what I just described, quickly scoping out a piece of information to see if it's worth reading. Superficial reading is where you read a difficult book quickly so that you can go prime yourself to read it a second time more rigorously once you have the whole argument in context. And that helps you avoid the procrastination of reading a super difficult book and trying to figure out everything it's saying on first run through. So let's go through both of those types of reading right now. Firstly, pre-reading. Quickly scoping out a piece of information to see if deeper reading is necessary. The major benefit of this is it saves a ton of time from reading a whole book that isn't good. And secondly, it primes you for a deeper read once you do go in for analytical reading. Think of it like warming up at the gym. Prepares your muscle for the onslaught that you are about to put on them. If you're doing leg day at least. The biggest question that you have to ask for inspectional reading is, what is the book about as a whole? And there are 4 steps to answering that question. The first is classifying the book according to kind and subject matter. The second is stating what the whole book is about in a few sentences. The third is outlining the major parts of the book in their order and relation. And the fourth is defining the major problem or problems that the author is trying to solve. So let's go through each of those steps now. The first is classifying the book according to kind and subject matter. It is incredible how many people read through books without doing this at first. They don't even figure out what type of book it is that they're reading. But depending upon the type of book, you'll read it completely differently. A science book is not going to be read the same as a math book. So that's why it's essential that you classify a book before you read it. How do you classify books? At the highest level, there's 2 types of books, imaginatory and expository. Imaginative are works that deal more with emotions and experiences through narrative, whereas expository works primarily convey knowledge through opinions, hypotheses, and speculations. Expository works split into 2 more categories, which are theoretical and practical. Theoretical information deals with saying that something is the case, whereas practical information teaches you to do something with the information. So, for example, A Brief History of Time is a theoretical work because it's not practical in any sense. The only thing that it opens you up to is realizing the sheer meaninglessness of your existence and needing to contemplate the ever-fleeting nature of life. That got dark pretty fast, but wahoo! Everything's better with Mario. However, how-to information or practical information is all about doing something with the advice that is given. Then you can split theoretical information into if it's scientific, if it's historical, or if it's philosophical. A historical work usually deals with more of a narrative, kind of like imaginative works. Whereas philosophical and scientific works, you can differentiate because scientific works usually deal with something outside of the everyday experience, whereas philosophical work deal with things that are much more inside of everyday experience. So how can you figure out which one of those classifications it is? Apart from just questioning what the book is about, you can also examine the title of the book. The title is a great indicator. So for example, think about what the title of Charles Darwin's famous work is. Say it right now. I'm not joking. Say it out loud. Okay, what the title is The Origin of Species. However, it's not unlikely that you said the origin of the species, which means a completely different thing is going to be talked about in the book. The species implies it's going to be about Homo sapiens and humans as a species, whereas the origin of species implies it's going to be about species as a whole. So that one word completely changes what the book's gonna be about. And now you can see how important it is to look at the title of a book before you read it. So once you've classified the book, other steps of inspectional reading include stating what the book is about in a few sentences, outlining the major parts of a book and their relation, and then finally defining the problems or problem the author is trying to solve. And these questions can all be solved by X-raying a book. That's right, you get to be a doctor while you inspectionally read. Don't have to get your degree, you just have to take the art of linked reading. It's a speed hack. And this is our job as inspectional readers, to find the skeleton underneath the book's cover. And this is interesting. When you're a writer, your job is to take the outline that you've created and then add in fluff, not fluff, but add in argumentation and prose to create a book. Whereas when you're the reader, your job is to take all the words and then find the skeleton underneath. So you have sort of an opposite job as the writer, which makes it a very interesting relationship. This is also how you differentiate bad books from great ones, because great books will make this process easier, right? The skeleton is clearer underneath all of the prose. So how do you actually X-ray a book once you've classified it? There are 7 steps to X-raying a book. First, you examine the preface, which is a great way to get a sense of the author's argumentation as a whole. Then you're gonna study the table of contents, which is essentially the author just giving you the outline to the book right there. It's incredible how many people don't read the table of contents before reading a book. Then check the index and see what words the author is using and the terminology for those words inside of the book. And this will give you a general grasp for what topics are going to be covered. Then read the publisher's blurb, which if the book is new and has a dust jacket, this can give you a general sense of the book's content and significance. Then read the conclusion. And I know what you're thinking. What? Why would you read the conclusion before you've read the book? Well, for an imaginative work, I can see why you wouldn't want to read the conclusion. That would be a pretty big spoil. But for a expository work, reading the conclusion is going to give you a great sense for what problems the author is juggling with and what they actually solved throughout the book. So if those problem solutions are interesting to you, it's a great indicator you should actually read the rest of the book. Then inspect the pivotal chapters, which based on your other steps of X-raying, you can figure out which ones are pivotal and which ones you might want to read. You don't have to read all of them. And pay attention to summary statements at the beginning or end of the chapters in particular. And then finally, just thumb through the book, right? Like skim the chapters, skim like some significant paragraphs. Don't read every sentence, then you're just reading the book. And after doing all 7 of those steps, you will have X-rayed the entire book, and you should be able to answer the 4 culminating steps of pre-reading, which are classifying the book according to kind and subject matter, stating what the book is about as a whole in a few sentences, outlining the major parts and their relation, and stating the author's problem or problems. And these steps will provide you a framework for not only understanding the book as a whole, but also figuring out if you want to dive in for a deeper read, and if you do, priming you for that deeper read. And here's the epic thing about this process. You can use this outside of books too. It doesn't just have to be for books. You can use it for podcasts, videos, anything. The inspectional reading process is useful regardless of if it's a book or not. Then we have the second type of inspectional reading, which is superficial reading. And this is where you read quickly through a difficult book without stopping to ponder things you don't understand. And it's different from pre-reading because it's mainly done on difficult books rather than easy books. Now, why do we do this? Because you can't understand a difficult book until you understand its argument in context, which means you need to read the entire book. And even the greatest books can't be understood on first reading until you've done that. Now, I know this particularly well because I did not follow this advice when I first got into reading a few years ago with a book in behavioral economics that is called Thinking Fast and Slow. This book is well known in the behavioral economics sphere for being the pinnacle of the research and also really difficult if you've never read into the field before. So I read this book at the beginning of my first Cornell semester, and it was agony. It took me a month to read. Every single night I was reading for 45 minutes, an hour on end, and it was just really difficult to understand. It's because I didn't superficially read it first. I tried to read and understand every chapter on first go through, and I wish I knew about superficial reading the first time that I was reading this book, because it would have helped me so much. So don't make the same mistake. Then I wanted to make one last point about reading speeds. Now that we've talked about the two types of inspectional reading, you might wonder in this video, where's the part where you go like, I'm gonna teach you how to read 500 pages in a single minute? Well, don't fall for those speed reading courses, because the fact is, the faster you read, the less you will comprehend from a book. I read War and Peace one time, trying to do one of those speed reading courses. I read it in 3 minutes, and would you like to know what it's about? I think it's about Russia. Yeah. I didn't actually do that, but the point is that don't speed read all the time, because the misconception of people coming into reading is that either you should read really fast and learn to do that through speed reading courses, or you should just read at one speed all the time. And the reality is that some books are hardly worth skimming. Some you should read quickly, and a few you should read quite slowly for full comprehension. So the exact reading speed is up for you to determine. There is no one size fits all reading speed for reading. That is the art of inspectional reading, is being able to read at different speeds depending upon the book. So you've learned the two types of inspectional reading: superficial and pre-reading. You understand that pre-reading involves 4 steps, which are classifying the book according to kind and subject matter, what the book is about in a few sentences, outlining the major parts of the book and their relation, and defining the problem or problems the author is posing. You learn that superficial reading is learning to read fast through a difficult book on first go through, so you can go slower on the second read. You also learn that there is no one size fits all reading speed. You should read depending upon the book that you're reading. So don your Sherlock Holmes cap and magnifying glass, because you are now a professional inspectional reader. Check out the third part of this series to learn how to analytically read a book. This will teach you how to understand a book deeper than you ever have and smartly share your insights with others. But before you do, consider signing up for my free email course, Unlock Your Inner Genius with Linked Book Note-Taking. Over 3 days, use linked note-taking apps to create novel insights, compound your knowledge, and become that interesting person in your friend group. You can sign up by clicking the link in the top right corner or in the description below. As always, have a fantastic rest of your day, eat some peanut butter, and bye-bye.